Super Mario 64 is a classic Nintendo 64 game where players control Mario, a plumber, on a quest to save Princess Peach from Bowser, an evil turtle. The game is set in a three-dimensional world, which was a new concept when the game was released. The player navigates through different levels, collecting power stars to unlock new levels. Super Mario 64 is considered one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 because it was the first successful 3D platform game. The game was groundbreaking with its innovative 3D graphics, gameplay, and camera angles. It was one of the first games to use a joystick for movement, which was a new concept at the time. The game's design allowed for exploration and gave the player freedom to choose their path through the game. Overall, Super Mario 64 revolutionized the gaming industry and set the standard for 3D platformer games. It is a classic game that is still enjoyed by gamers today and will always be remembered as one of the greatest games of all time. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time is a game about a young boy named Link who has to save the land of Hyrule from an evil sorcerer named Ganondorf. Link travels through different places, solves puzzles, and fights enemies to collect powerful items and awaken spiritual sages. Along the way, he also learns how to play magical songs on his ocarina, which help him progress through the game. This game is one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 because it was one of the first 3D adventure games that allowed players to explore a vast open world with a compelling storyline. The game's graphics, music, and gameplay were groundbreaking at the time and had a significant influence on future games in the industry. The game also introduced many innovative gameplay mechanics like Z-targeting, which made combat more intuitive and dynamic. The puzzles and dungeons in the game were challenging and engaging, providing an excellent balance of exploration and combat. Overall, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is a masterpiece that set the standard for future action-adventure games, and its influence can still be felt in modern games today. GoldenEye 007 is a first-person shooter game released for the Nintendo 64 console in 1997. The game follows the story of James Bond, a secret agent who has to save the world from a terrorist organization known as Janus. Players take on the role of James Bond, as they complete various missions that involve stealth, shooting, and puzzle solving. The game features a multiplayer mode where up to 4 players can battle each other in different maps. GoldenEye 007 is considered one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 because it was one of the first console games to feature a compelling and immersive story, unique gameplay mechanics, and a multiplayer mode that was both fun and addictive. The game's graphics, sound design, and controls were also praised for being ahead of their time. GoldenEye 007 set a new standard for first-person shooter games and inspired many other games in the genre. It is still considered a classic and a must-play game for anyone interested in the history of video games. Mario Kart 64 was released in 1996 for the Nintendo 64 console. It features the famous characters from the Mario franchise racing on various tracks with the aim of being the first to cross the finish line. The game has 8 different characters to choose from, each with their unique abilities and characteristics. Players can compete in 4 different modes: Grand Prix, Time Trial, Versus, and Battle. The game offers a fast and fun gameplay experience that can be enjoyed alone or with friends. It has a variety of power-ups and items that can be obtained during the race, such as banana peels or turtle shells, to help players gain an advantage or slow down their opponents. Mario Kart 64 is one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 because it revolutionized the racing genre by introducing a new gaming style that was both fun and competitive. The game's graphics were impressive for its time, featuring 3D environments and smooth animations. Its multiplayer mode was also a huge success, allowing up to 4 players to compete simultaneously. Additionally, the game's catchy music and sound effects added to the overall enjoyable experience. Overall, Mario Kart 64 is a game that has stood the test of time and still remains a favorite among gamers to this day. Banjo-Kazooie is a game that was released on the Nintendo 64 in 1998. In the game, you control Banjo, a bear, and Kazooie, a bird who lives in Banjo's backpack. Together, they venture through a magical world to rescue Banjo's sister, who has been kidnapped by the evil witch, Gruntilda. The game is considered mind-blowing because of its colorful and vibrant world, which is filled with puzzles, secrets, and hidden areas. The game's controls are easy to learn, and the characters are charming and lovable. The game also features catchy music and humorous dialogue. Banjo-Kazooie is also known for its open-world gameplay, which allows the player to explore the game's levels in any order they choose. This gives the game a sense of freedom and encourages players to experiment with different strategies to complete the game. Overall, Banjo-Kazooie is a classic game that has stood the test of time. Its engaging gameplay, memorable characters, and innovative design make it one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on the Nintendo 64. Perfect Dark is a first-person shooter game for the Nintendo 64 console. It follows the story of a female agent named Joanna Dark who works for a secret agency called the Carrington Institute. Joanna is tasked with investigating a conspiracy involving aliens and a corrupt corporation. The game has a wide variety of weapons and gadgets, as well as a multiplayer mode that can be played with up to 4 players. The game also features a unique story that is full of twists and turns. One of the reasons why Perfect Dark is considered one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 is because it was ahead of its time in terms of graphics and gameplay. The game featured advanced artificial intelligence for enemies and non-playable characters, which was rare for games of its time. It also offered a deep and immersive story that kept players engaged throughout the game. Additionally, Perfect Dark was one of the first games to feature a cooperative mode, where players could work together to complete missions. This helped to set the standard for future cooperative games. Overall, Perfect Dark is a classic game that is still beloved by gamers today. Its impressive graphics, gameplay, and story make it a must-play for anyone who loves first-person shooter games. Star Fox 64 is a 3D rail shooter video game developed by Nintendo for the Nintendo 64 console. In the game, players control Fox McCloud and his team of anthropomorphic animals as they pilot their spacecraft, the R-Wing, through various levels, battling enemy ships and bosses while trying to save the Lilat system from the evil Andross. Flippy here. Star Fox 64 is one of the top 7 mind-blowing games on Nintendo 64 for several reasons.
Flippy, watch out!
Firstly, it was one of the first games to make use of the console's 3D capabilities, providing players with a fully immersive experience. The game's graphics, sound effects, and music were also top-notch, adding to the overall excitement and intensity of the gameplay. Another reason why Star Fox 64 is a mind-blowing game is its innovative use of branching paths. Depending on the player's performance in certain levels, the game's story and ending can change, providing a unique playthrough experience each time. Finally, Star Fox 64's multiplayer mode is also a game-changer, allowing up to 4 players to battle it out in various arenas. This mode added another layer of excitement and replayability to an already amazing game. Overall, Star Fox 64 is a classic Nintendo 64 game that is still remembered and celebrated today for its groundbreaking gameplay, graphics, and sound design.